Hi, I'm Bill Bernard. Welcome to Equip 412. I'm glad you decided to check my blog out. In this current series, Is There Anyone Out There?, I began by looking at what's called the Cosmological Argument. And we ask, does the Cosmological Argument provide us with evidence that God exists? Or is the existence of the universe evidence that God exists? Is that a possible explanation? Is God the most reasonable explanation for how the universe began? We saw that there are some pretty strong indicators that at the very least point us in the direction of God's existence. If this is your first time you're joining us, welcome. I strongly encourage you to go back and watch the first three vlogs in this series to get up to speed. This time we're going to look at the fine-tuning argument. What's that, you ask? Keep watching. This is episode 4 in our series, Is There Anyone Out There? We examined the cosmological argument. In this episode, I'm going to be looking at the fine-tuning argument. In the New Testament, the Apostle Paul wrote this: "For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse." That's from Romans chapter 1, verse 20. You know, who doesn't enjoy watching a beautiful sunrise or sunset? Or enjoy a beautiful landscape? Or gently flowing streams? Or fields of wildflowers? Or beautiful lakes? Or magnificent waterfalls? Majestic mountains, or the power of the oceans? Or who doesn't enjoy looking up at the stars at night? Or how about watching a distant thunderstorm slowly roll toward you, watching the spectacular lightning show? I think we all enjoy a quiet walk in the woods, and as we reflect on the beauty that's all around us, it's all truly spectacular and amazing. My wife was driving home from a visit to our daughter's house and was admiring the beautiful fall colors. It was an especially windy day with winds blowing around 40 to 50 miles an hour with gusts much stronger. And as she was driving along the interstate, she spotted one particular tree decked out in fall colors, and the bright sunlight backlit this tree that had beautiful gold and orange leaves, and it really captured her attention. Suddenly, a powerful gust of wind actually blew all the leaves off the tree all at once in just a couple seconds. She described it as an explosion of color like she had never seen before. Now, have you ever reflected on what goes on to the change in the colors of the trees in the fall and all the processes involved in that? And then there are all the complexities of the human body. Listen to what the psalmist wrote. "For you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance." It's from the 139th Psalm. Just consider for a moment the complexities of the human body, and as an example, the human hand and all that's required to make it work. Look at your own hand. Look at the back, look at the palm, move your fingers around, make a fist, point, clap your hands together. Consider all the nerves and muscles and tendons and arteries, the flexor sheath, and so on, and how they all function together. There's so much more just to the human hand. What about all the intricacies of the human eye? It's truly amazing how the eye functions. And then there's all the parts of the human ear that help us to hear and enjoy the sounds all around us. Or the human heart, pumping blood, recycling the blood constantly, second by second, minute by minute, day after day. And look how complex a human cell is. It's amazing. Now, the next time you're in your doctor's office, there's usually an anatomical chart of the human body. Just study it for a while. Study it for a couple minutes. And reflect on how all the various body parts and systems all function together and how intricate and complex it is. Consider the incredible complexity of DNA. DNA contains the instructions needed for an organism to develop and survive and reproduce. To carry out these functions, DNA sequences must be converted into messages that can be used to produce proteins, which are the complex molecules that do most of the work in our bodies. DNA contains a sort of language to cause that to happen. Dr. Stephen Meyer writes, "One of the most extraordinary discoveries of the 20th century was that DNA actually stores information, the detailed instructions for assembling proteins, in the form of a 4-character digital code." He continues, "The coding regions of DNA have exactly the same relevant properties as a computer code or language." It's amazing. Dr. Francis Crick, an agnostic and one of the discoverers of DNA, after decades of work deciphering it, admitted this. He said, "An honest man, armed with all the knowledge available to us now, could only state that in some sense, the origin of life appears at the moment to be almost a miracle. So many are the conditions which would have to have been satisfied to get it going." But DNA is only one small but important part of our bodies and of fine-tuning. The universe, in fact, all of life itself, appears to have been designed and finely tuned in order to permit life to exist and thrive. So what exactly is the fine-tuning argument? The fine-tuning argument refers to the surprising precision of nature's physical constants in the early conditions of the universe. To explain how a habitable planet like Earth could even exist, these fundamental constants have to be set to just the right values. You know, when I was growing up, before everything was digital, if you wanted to listen to the radio, you had to finally adjust the tuning knob to your station of choice before it would become clear. If you just got close to your station, there was static. But once you finally tuned the dial, your station came in loud and clear. The fine-tuning argument says that everything in the universe was precisely and finely tuned in order to permit life. What modern science is now telling us is that the laws of physical constants necessary to regulate and control all matter in the universe appear to be finely tuned for life to exist, survive, succeed. Dr. Francis Collins, director of the National Institutes of Health, wrote this: "For organic life to exist, the fundamental regularities and constants of physics, the speed of light, the gravitational constant, the strength of the weak and strong nuclear forces, must all have values that together fall into an extremely narrow range. The probability of this perfect calibration happening by chance is so tiny as to be statistically negligible." He's saying that when we take into consideration all of the constants that had to be in place for life to exist on Earth, and given the fact that those constants had to be so precise that if any of them were off by an infinitesimally small amount, life would not exist on Earth. And the chance or the odds of all those things happening just so are so small that they are virtually insignificant. Collins goes on to say, "When you look from the perspective of a scientist at the universe, it looks as if it knew we were coming. There are 15 constants, the gravitational constant, various constants about the strong and weak nuclear force, etc., that have precise values. If any one of those constants were off by even 1 point in a million, or in some cases, now get this, in some cases by 1 part in a million, the universe could not have actually come to the point where we see it. Matter would not have been able to coalesce or come together, unite, so that there would be no galaxy, no stars, no planets, and certainly no people. Some have said that it is as if there were a large number of dials that all had to be tuned to within extremely narrow limits. And they were. It seems extremely unlikely that this could happen by chance. Stephen Hawking concludes, the odds against a universe like ours emerging out of something like the Big Bang are enormous. I think there are clearly religious implications. Elsewhere, he said, it would be very difficult to explain why the universe would have begun in just this way, except as the act of a God who intended to create things, or create beings like us. Dr. Hawking did not believe in the God of the Bible, yet he would say something like that. According to science, there are 122 constants that are necessary for life to exist in the universe. We're not going to look at all of them. Let's just look at 12. First of all, the oxygen level. On Earth, oxygen comprises 21% of the atmosphere. The precise figure is what's called an anthropic constant. That is, it's something that is unvarying or unchanging that is necessary for human life. And that makes life on Earth possible. If oxygen were just 25%, fire would erupt spontaneously. If it were 15%, human beings would suffocate. I'm especially familiar with the importance of maintaining safe oxygen levels. In a previous role as a safety training coordinator for a large American manufacturer, part of my job included training employees for what's called confined space entry. Occasionally, employees would be required to enter large processing tanks for maintenance or cleaning purposes. Before entering, they were required to monitor the levels of 4 different gases using special monitoring equipment. One of the gases was oxygen. If the oxygen levels became too high, a simple static electric spark from clothing could ignite a flash fire, or simply shaking your head causing static electricity in your hair could also ignite a flash fire. If the oxygen levels became too low, the risk of suffocation was greatly increased. As long as an employee was in the confined space, it had to be monitored continuously by someone outside the space. Number 2, the atmospheric transparency. If the atmosphere were less transparent, not enough solar radiation would reach the Earth's surface. If it were more transparent, we would be bombarded with far too much solar radiation down here. In addition to atmospheric transparency, the atmospheric composition of precise levels of nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide, and ozone are all in themselves vital anthropic constants. They are all finely tuned constants that enable life to exist. Number 3, the Earth-Moon gravitational interaction. If the interaction, or the gravitational pull between the Earth and the Moon were greater than it currently is, tidal effects on the oceans and the atmosphere and the rotational period would be too severe. If it were less, orbital changes would cause climatic instabilities. In either event, life on Earth would be impossible. Number 4, the tilt of the Earth's axis. The Earth is tilted at 23.5 degrees, and that is considered just right. This angle of tilt is responsible for the seasons that we experience. If the tilt were altered slightly, surface temperatures would be too extreme on Earth to sustain life. The Moon's size and distance from Earth and gravitational pull all work to stabilize the Earth's tilt so that life can exist. Number 5, carbon dioxide level. If the CO2 level were higher than it is now, a runaway greenhouse effect would develop and we'd eventually burn up. If the level were lower than it is now, plants would not be able to maintain efficient photosynthesis and we'd all suffocate. Number 6, gravity. If the gravitational force were altered by something like 1 part in 10,000 billion billion billion, our sun would not exist. And therefore, neither would we. Now, that's a decimal point followed by about 32 zeros and a 1. Talk about precision. Talk about fine-tuning. Number 7, centrifugal force. If the centrifugal force of planetary movements did not precisely balance the gravitational forces, nothing could be held in orbit around the sun. So planets would be cut loose and they go flying off into space. Number 8, rate of expansion. If the universe had expanded at a rate of 1/1,000,000th more slowly than it did, expansion would have stopped and the universe would have collapsed on itself before any stars had formed. If it had expanded faster, then no galaxies would have been able to form. Number 9, the speed of light. Any of the laws of physics can be described as a function of the velocity of light, which is now defined as about 186,000 miles per second. Even a slight variation in the speed of light would alter the other constants and prevent the possibility of life on Earth. Number 10, water vapor levels. If water vapor levels in the atmosphere were greater than they are now, a runaway greenhouse effect would cause temperatures to rise too high for human life. If they were less, an insufficient greenhouse effect would make the Earth too cold to support human life. Number 11, Earth's speed of rotation. If the rotation of the Earth took longer than 24 hours, temperature differences would be too great between night and day. It would get way too hot at night, or way too cold during the night, and way too hot during the day. If the rotation period were shorter, atmospheric wind velocities would be too great. Number 12, atmospheric discharge rate. If the atmospheric discharge, that is lightning, if that lightning rate, that discharge rate were greater, there would be too much fire destruction. If it were less, there would be too little oxygen or nitrogen fixing in the soil. And the magnitude of the lightning transformation process, in soil is remarkable. Worldwide storms are estimated to produce somewhere around 100 million tons of useful nitrogen compounds each year. Nitrogen is the third most abundant element in the human body, so we need it. What makes this so interesting is that all of those conditions, plus 110 more, must remain constant. They must remain steady and finely tuned for there to be a solar system and life on Earth. Astrophysicist Hugh Ross calculated the probability of the 12 constants we just talked about, plus the 110 other necessary constants, all happening by chance. He said that the odds of these constants occurring by chance are 1 in 10 to the 138th power. That's a 10 with 138 zeros after it. For another planet to exist by chance in the universe, to support human life as on Earth, the odds are infinitesimally small, unless there is an intelligent designer. So if we're relying only on the science in a closed universe like ours, then the odds of there being life somewhere else in the universe outside of Earth is extremely small, unless an infinite, eternal, all-powerful designer personally intervened and chose to create a life-sustaining planet with its own solar system that is conducive to life somewhere else out there in the universe. All of the fine-tuning in the universe is truly beyond comprehension. All of the individual factors that have gone into making this universe, this particular solar system, and this specific planet suitable for life is truly mind-blowing. it's almost impossible to grasp. By being suitable for life, or life permitting, what scientists mean is that those properties of organisms to take in food, extract energy from it, grow, adapt to its environment, and reproduce. In other words, that kind of life. Dr. William Craig wrote that all of these constants, to be so finely tuned, having with such precise accuracy, would be like firing a bullet toward the other side of the universe, some 20 billion light years away, and hitting a target 1 inch square. That'd be about the size of a postage stamp. Could that happen by chance? Or a finely tuned universe created by an infinite, eternal, all-powerful, all-wise designer? Which one of those seems the most reasonable inference? Canadian philosopher John Leslie believes that the fine-tuning argument leaves us with only a choice between two possibilities. One is that God is real. Or the only way to avoid that conclusion is to believe in the second possibility, the existence of a multiverse. Now, some atheistic scientists believe that the multiverse theory suggests the simultaneous existence of many, possible trillions of parallel universes, along with ours, in which almost anything is theoretically possible, will ultimately be proven true. In other words, atheists who believe in a multiverse believe that there are many parallel universes out there, billions or trillions, that one like our life-permitting universe are not only possible, but probable. So we shouldn't be surprised by its existence, because with all the universes out there, then it's very probable that one like ours would exist. And we just happen to be lucky enough to happen to live on it. So there's no need for God. Trust the multiverse. The question then arises, where did all those multiverses come from? Where did all the other universes come from? Don't they also require a creator who has fine-tuned them? So, going back to Professor Leslie's two possibilities, both may be possible, but which one is the most reasonable explanation? Dr. John Polkinghorne, who is a professor of physics with a doctorate in quantum field theory and as well as a second doctorate in elementary particle physics, he's a pretty smart guy, said this. He rejects the multiverse theory, saying, let us recognize these speculations for what they are. They're not physics, but in the strictest sense, metaphysics, or beyond physics. There is no purely scientific reason to believe in an ensemble of universes. By construction, these other worlds are unknowable by us. A possible explanation of equal intellectual respectability and, to my mind, greater economy and elegance would be that this one world is the way it is because it is the creation of the will of a creator who purposes that it should be so. You know, atheists accuse Christians of having a blind faith because they say there's no evidence behind our faith. But when you think about it, aren't atheists guilty of the same thing when it comes to believing in a multiverse? Atheists categorize our faith in God and belief in heaven as irrational. But isn't belief in a multiverse even more irrational? My faith looks at the cosmological evidence and the fine-tuning evidence and says there must be a creator who designed and fine-tuned all of this just so for the purpose of creating life in general and human life specifically. But the atheist faith chooses to look at the evidence, same evidence that I look at, and believe in wild speculations like multiverses with no evidence. It's just theory, which seems like mere fantasies of magic without a magician. Which is the most reasonable inference? A question that Frank Turek often poses to atheists goes something like this. He's a Christian apologist. He speaks at on university campuses, at conferences, and churches, and so on all over the world, he asks this question of atheists who confront him. He says, if it were proven that Christianity were true, 100% true, would you become a Christian? And with very rare exception, the answer is almost always no. And the most likely reason for that is not that they just can't believe the truth claims that Jesus and the apostles made. It's because they won't believe them. So it's not a matter of the mind, but a matter of the heart. Now, if you've been watching this and wondering if this whole God thing is true or not, would you at least be willing to do something that maybe you've never done before? Would you just take a few seconds, that's all it's going to take, and pray? But don't worry about what to say. I'll tell you what you can say. Just a very simple but sincere prayer. Okay? Pray this: God, I don't know about all this, but if you're really out there, would you somehow show yourself to me in a way that I could understand? Touch my mind and my heart. If you're out there, I sincerely want to know the truth. I want to know the truth about who you are. Amen. Simple. Are you willing to at least start there? If you're sincerely seeking answers, I'm convinced God will show you. And he may even do it in a way that you would never suspect. Friends, we've looked at the cosmological argument and the fine-tuning argument. Ultimately, here's the big so what question. This all boils down to this question: is there anyone out there? As you review the first 3 episodes and consider this present one, how will you answer that question? Next time we'll finish this current series as we look at the moral argument for God's existence. But in upcoming weeks, we'll be examining the ultimate question: what will you do with Jesus? You know, Jesus said, I have come that they may have life and have it abundantly. He also said, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And he said, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. So after I finish this current series, I'm going to begin looking into who Jesus is, why he came, what he did, and so on. And at the conclusion of that series, I'm going to ask you this question again: what will you do with Jesus? So please be thinking about it. If you'd like to learn more about this and study the cosmological argument yourself, please check out the resources and links page at equip412.com, where you'll find links to apologetics websites, as well as some excellent books by a variety of apologetics authors. I hope you'll use these resources to really dig in on your own and study these important topics. Also, please subscribe to Equip 412 while you're there. And while you're at it, check out 2 free chapters of my new book, Be the Difference. It contains lessons for becoming a no-compromise 21st century difference maker in God's kingdom. And just a reminder, if you found us through Facebook, please click like and share. And also, let us know that you're out there. We like to track who we're contacting, who's interacting with us, and so forth. It's encouraged to know who we're ministering to out there. Once again, I sincerely want to thank you for watching this episode today. I hope it's helping you, and I pray you will continue on with us for further episodes. And as always, please keep your comments courteous and respectful. And don't forget to join us for the next episode of Equip 412. Until next time, be prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you, yet do it with gentleness and respect. Friends, may the Lord bless you this week, and I hope you'll be back again next week. See you then.